Assalamu alaikum. This is Sojla Sahar from Mashriq.Tv. Our first story is about suspected Russian hackers broke into federal agencies, according to US officials. Hackers believed to be working for Russia have been monitoring internal email traffic at the US Treasury Department and an agency that decides internet and telecommunications policy, according to people familiar with the matter. Our second story is about Mozambique jihadists push masses to Pemba. The population has soared in Pemba, a northern Mozambique port known for its wide bay, but rather than tourists coming for a swim, the newcomers have fled Islamic extremists. In the past few months, boatloads of people with little but the clothes they wear have landed under the palm trees after their homes fell prey to Al-Shabaab gunmen swearing allegiance to the Islamic State group. Let's move on to our next story. EU urges China to free detained, reports. The European Union has urged China to release all journalists and citizens held in connection with their reporting following the detention of a Bloomberg News employee. His Fan, a Chinese citizen, was taken from her home by plainclothes security officials last Monday. Our next story is about more US churches are committing to racism-linked reparations. The Episcopal Diocese of Texas acknowledges that its first bishop in 1859 was a slaveholder. An Episcopal church in New York City erects a sign noting the building's creation in 1810 was made possible by wealth resulting from slavery. Our next story is about Russia successfully test launches heavy lift space rocket after long hiatus. Russia on Monday successfully test launched its first heavy-lift Angara A-5 space rocket after a 6-year hiatus in a project Vladimir Putin describes as having huge significance for national security. A launch pad for the new rocket is due to open in 2021. Let's move on to our next story. Delivering hope to millions. US begins its first vaccine shipments. The first shipments of COVID-19 vaccine left on trucks and planes early on Sunday, kicking off a historic effort to stop a surging pandemic that is claiming more than 2,400 lives a day in the United States. Let's move on to our next story. Afghan peace talks to restart in early January. Peace talks between the Afghan government and the Taliban insurgents will resume in early January as the warring sides take a break after reaching agreement on procedural ground rules for sustaining their dialogue to end the war. Our next story is about investigation identifies Russian officers who tailed Navalny before poisoning. An undercover team working for Russia's Federal Security Service followed opposition leader Alexei Navalny on more than 30 trips to and from Moscow starting in 2017 before he was poisoned in August, according to a bombshell investigation led by Bellingcat. The Kremlin has denied having any role in the poisoning of Navalny, who is one of the most prominent domestic critics of President Vladimir Putin. Our next story is about Iran's strategic document with Kabul nearly finalized. Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Syed Abbas Araghchi, in meetings with Afghan officials, said that Iran and Afghanistan will soon finalize a strategic document that will provide the groundwork for deeper relations between the two countries. Next story is about Russia seeks UAE-Egypt for successful talks on Libyan crisis. Russia is seeking the United Arab Emirates and Egypt for successful talks on the Libyan crisis, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Monday during a press conference with his Emirati counterpart. Let's move on to our next story. Residents claim civilian casualties in airstrike. Local residents in Arghanbab district in the southern province of Kandahar claimed on Sunday that at least 11 civilians were killed in airstrikes in the district. The airstrikes, the residents said, hit civilian houses, and women and children were among those killed in the incident. Another story is about Sudan's removed from state sponsor of terrorism list. Secretary of State Michael Pompeo has announced that Sudan's designation as a state sponsor of terrorism is officially withdrawn. This represents a fundamental change in Sudan-US bilateral relationship towards greater collaboration and support for Sudan's historic democratic transition. Our next story is about London to close bars and restaurants as virus surge triggers toughest restrictions. Bars and restaurants in London and surrounding areas will be forced to close beginning Wednesday as the region is placed under England's highest alert for coronavirus restrictions, Health Secretary has confirmed. Our last story for today is about documents reveal negotiators' demands for talks agenda. The documents show that the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan's team has added a ceasefire, the preservation of national sovereignty, the freedom of the media, and the prohibition of activity by foreign fighters in Afghanistan as issues to be added to the agenda of the talks. This is it for now. Thank you for watching Mashriq.Tv. If you have any queries, you can email us at info@mashriq.tv.